The concrete tombiff, you think you've seen the worst of the system. You haven't even scratched the surface. Hit subscribe, because what you're about to hear doesn't just stay behind bars, it follows you home. The call came in just after 3:17 a.m. A body had been found, but not just anywhere. It was lying outside the outer perimeter fence of a federal Supermax facility, miles from the nearest road, where even getting close without clearance was nearly impossible. By the time Detective Aaron Vance arrived, floodlights had turned night into a harsh, artificial day. The wind cut through the desert, carrying dust and something else. Something metallic. The body was already covered, but the guards weren't talking. "That's him," one officer finally muttered, his voice low, almost reluctant. "Who?" Vance asked. The officer hesitated, then said it, "Inmate Carter Hayes." Vance's brow tightened. "That's not possible." It wasn't, because Carter Hayes had been declared dead 6 months ago, officially documented, signed off. Buried. Inside the system. Inside the concrete. Vance pulled back the sheet. The face was unmistakable. Pale. Cold. But not decomposed the way it should have been. Instead, Hayes looked recent, like he hadn't been gone long at all. What was he doing out here? Vance asked. No one answered. Because the real question was worse. How did he get out? By sunrise, the prison was locked down. This wasn't just any facility. It was a Supermax, one of the most secure environments in the world. Inmates here didn't escape. They didn't even see each other. Isolation wasn't a punishment, it was the design. Every movement tracked, every second accounted for, which meant one thing. If Carter Hayes was outside that fence, something inside had failed, or worse, something had been hid. Inside the administrative wing, Warden Elise Granger stood rigid behind her desk as Vance entered. "You understand the gravity of this," she said. Before he even sat down, "I understand that a dead man is no longer dead," Vance replied. "That's gravity enough." Her expression didn't change. He was pronounced deceased after a medical incident. Internal review confirmed it. "And the body?" "Processed. Buried." A pause. "Yes." Vance leaned forward slightly. "Then who did we just find outside your fence?" For the first time, Granger's composure cracked just enough to notice. "That's what I'd like you to tell me, Detective." Hours later, Vance found himself walking the inner corridors of the facility. Concrete. Steel. Silence. The kind of silence that didn't feel natural. Not peaceful, controlled. Each cell was a box within a box. Solid doors. No bars. Just narrow slots for food, trays, and communication. 23 hours a day alone, said Lieutenant Brooks, the officer escorting him. Sometimes more, and the other hour. Recreation. Vance raised an eyebrow. "Meaning?" "A slightly bigger box." They stopped outside a cell. Number D17. This was Hayes' unit. Brooks said. Vance stared at the door. No scratches. No damage. Nothing to suggest a struggle. "You said he died in here." "Collapsed during routine monitoring." "And no one thought to question it?" Brooks stiffened. "Medical confirmed it." Vance stepped closer. Something felt off. Not visible, but present. "Open it," he said. Brooks hesitated. "Protocol says, open it." The door slid open with a heavy mechanical hum. Inside nothing, just a bed, a steel sink, a toilet. But Vance didn't move, because something in the air felt wrong. "Smell that?" he asked. Brooks frowned. "It's a cell." "No," Vance said quietly. "That's not what I mean." He stepped inside. Slowly, every instinct telling him this wasn't just a place someone had lived. It was a place something had been done. He crouched near the floor, ran his fingers along the concrete, then stopped. There, a faint line, barely visible, too straight to be random. "What is this?" he asked. Brooks leaned in. "Maintenance seam. All cells have them." But Vance wasn't convinced. He tapped it lightly. Hollow. His eyes lifted slowly. "Get me tools." 30 minutes later, the section of flooring was cut open. What they found underneath wasn't supposed to exist. A cavity. Hidden. Perfectly engineered. Not part of any official blueprint. Inside it, a second layer, smaller. Chamber.no light.no ventilation. Just enough space for a human body. Brooks stepped back, shaken. What the hell is this? Vance didn't answer immediately, because he was staring at the interior walls, covered in marks, scratches. Not random patterns, days, or maybe weeks. Someone had been kept here, buried alive beneath the cell and seen, unrecorded, forgotten. Then Vance noticed something else, etched deeper than the rest. Words. He leaned closer, brushing away dust, and read them aloud. They don't let you die. They replace you. The corridor fell silent. Brooks whispered, "Replace?" Vance stood slowly, his mind already racing ahead, because if Carter Hayes had been inside this hidden chamber, then the man declared dead 6 months ago was never the one they buried, and somewhere inside this prison, someone else had taken his place. Vance turned toward Brooks, his voice low and urgent. "Seal this unit. Nobody in or out." Brooks nodded quickly, already reaching for his radio, but before he could speak, a voice crackled through the system, not from his device, from the overhead speakers, calm, controlled, and unmistakably deliberate. "Unit D is already sealed." Vance froze. That wasn't protocol. That wasn't command. That was something else. Who said that? Brooks demanded. No response. Just silence again. Heavy, watching. Vance looked back at the open cavity beneath the floor, then at the empty cell, and for the first time since arriving, he felt it. Not confusion, not curiosity, but something colder, because this wasn't just a failure of security. It was a system, and they had just opened a door that was never meant to be found. But what was hidden beneath cell D17 was only the beginning. The system beneath the system. The time the corridor was cleared, the silence had changed. It wasn't just controlled anymore. It felt deliberate. Detective Aaron Vance stood outside cell D17, staring at the sealed door again as if it might open on its own. The hidden chamber beneath it had already been covered, locked away under orders from Warden Granger. Too quickly, in his opinion. "Why seal it?" Vance asked, his voice low. Lieutenant Brooks avoided eye contact. "Orders? That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got." Vance studied him for a moment, then turned away. "Then I'll get a better one." Warden Elise Granger didn't look surprised when he walked back into her office. She looked prepared. "You went into the cell," she said. Vance didn't sit this time. "There's a second chamber beneath it." "I'm aware." That stopped him. "You're aware?" he repeated. "You didn't think that was worth mentioning?" Granger folded her hands calmly. "It's part of an outdated structural design." "Outdated?" Vance's voice sharpened. "There were markings inside. Someone was kept there recently." Pause. Then she said something that made the room feel colder. "You're assuming those markings are recent?" Vance leaned forward slightly. "I'm assuming someone was alive down there long enough to count time." Granger didn't respond immediately. Instead, she reached into a drawer and pulled out a thin folder. No label. No markings. She slid it across the desk. "You want answers," she said. "Start there." The file wasn't official. No headers. No seals. Just typed pages. Vance flipped it open. The first line read, "Supplemental Containment Protocol. Level X." His eyes narrowed. "This isn't standard," he said. "No," Granger replied. "It isn't." He kept reading. Descriptions of behavioral deviations. Inmates demonstrating persistent non-compliance beyond isolation. Thresholds. Recommendations that didn't sound like policy. They sounded like experiments. Double containment. Environmental deprivation. Identity disruption. Vance looked up slowly. "What is this?" Granger held his gaze. "A program that was never supposed to exist." According to the file, Level X had been introduced quietly, years earlier. Not approved publicly. Not documented in official reports. It targeted inmates who didn't respond to solitary confinement. The ones who adapted. The ones who stayed stable. Solitary is supposed to break you, Vance muttered. Granger nodded. That's the theory, and if it doesn't? Her answer was simple. They go deeper. Vance felt something tighten in his chest. You built a second layer, he said. Under the cells. Not we, she corrected. It predates my administration, but it's still active. Granger didn't answer, which was answer enough. Carter Hayes, Vance said, flipping pages. He was part of this? Granger hesitated, then nodded once. He was transferred to Level X after repeated behavioral anomalies. Meaning? He stopped reacting. Vance frowned. That's it? That's everything, she said. No aggression, no distress, no communication, just nothing. Vance exhaled slowly. So you buried him under a cell? Granger's voice hardened slightly. We contained him, like an object, like a risk. The room fell quiet. Then Vance asked the question that had been building since he opened the file. If Hayes was in that chamber, who died 6 months ago? Granger's eyes didn't waver. That's the question you should be asking. Hours later, Vance sat alone in the monitoring room. Rows of screens. Every angle of the prison. Every corridor. Every cell. All visible. All recorded. Or at least, that's what he was told. He rewound the footage from 6 months ago. The day Carter Hayes was declared dead. The timestamp flickered, glitched, then stabilized. He leaned closer. Their cell D17, 2 officers entering a stretcher-covered body. Everything looked routine, normal. Oh, the screen skipped, just a fraction of a second, barely noticeable. Vance froze, rewound it again, slower this time, frame by frame, and there it was. Between one frame and the next the body changed. Same position, same sheet, but not the same outline, subtle, but unmistakable. His pulse quickened. That's not possible. He checked the logs. Timestamps aligned. No record of interruption. No flagged errors, which meant it had been edited cleanly, precisely. Someone had replaced the footage, just like the body. Brooks, Vance called as the lieutenant entered. I need access to internal transfers. Off-record movements. Brooks shook his head immediately. There's no such thing. Vance turned the monitor toward him. There is now. Brooks stared at the screen, then at Vance, then back again. His voice dropped. You need to stop. Vance's eyes narrowed. Excuse me, you're looking in the wrong place, Brooks said. This isn't something you dig into. Why not? Brooks hesitated for a long moment, then said quietly, because people who ask these questions don't leave here the same. Vance stepped closer. What does that mean? Brooks swallowed. It means the system doesn't just contain inmates. A pause. It corrects problems. Vance felt it then. The shift. The moment when a case stops being about truth and starts being about survival. But he wasn't backing off. Not now. Not after what he'd seen. Who else knows about Level X? He asked. Brooks shook his head. No one talks about it. Then who runs it? Another pause. Longer this time. Then Brooks said something that made Vance's blood run cold. It doesn't need running. Vance frowned. That doesn't make sense. Brooks met his eyes. It's automated. At that exact moment the lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then steadied. Every screen in the room glitched. Simultaneously. Static. Distortion. Then a single image appeared. Not from any live feed. Not from any camera. Just there. A horror. Unfamiliar. Too narrow. Too dark. Concrete walls closing in on both sides. And at the end a door. Unmarked. Unlabeled. Vance stepped closer to the screen. What is that? He whispered. Brooks didn't answer. Because he already knew. The image shifted slightly. As if the camera, or whatever was capturing it, was moving forward. Closer to the door. Then text appeared at the bottom of the screen. Not typed. Not overlaid. Etched. Like it had always been part of the image. Next transfer. Pending. Vance felt his chest tighten. Transfer of who? He asked. The screen flickered again. and just before it went black a name appeared, clear, deniable. Detective Aaron Vance. The monitors shut off, all of them at once. The room dropped into darkness, and somewhere deep within the prison a door unlocked. And this time, it wasn't for an inmate. The final containment. The emergency lights came on in pulses. Red, then darkness, then red again. Detective Aaron Vance stood frozen in the monitoring room. The last image still burned into his mind, his own name, marked as a transfer. Not an inmate, not a suspect, a transfer. Tell me that was a glitch, he said quietly. Lieutenant Brooks didn't answer, because he couldn't, because they both knew what this place did to problems. The door behind them locked with a heavy, mechanical thud. Brooks spun around. Control. This is Lieutenant Brooks. Override access now. Nothing. No response. Only the low hum of systems running somewhere deeper inside the facility. Vance moved to the door, testing it. Sealed. Automated, right? He said, glancing back. You said it doesn't need running. Brooks looked like he was about to say something, then stopped. Because the lights flickered again. And this time, a voice came through. Not from the speakers, from everywhere. Calm, cold, emotionless. The containment protocol initiated. Vance's jaw tightened. Who is this? No answer, just another line. Subject identified. Behavioral anomaly. Brooks whispered. It's tagging you. Vance felt a chill run through him. Reason authorized. Access to restricted layer. The same phrase echoed faintly through the walls. Layer at. Area at unit. Layer. This prison wasn't just built outward. It was built downward. A metallic click echoed from the far end of the corridor. Then another. Doors unlocking sequentially, like something was guiding them or leading them. Don't move, Brooks said quickly. That's how it starts. Vance looked at him. How what starts? Brooks hesitated, then said it. The transfers. But Vance was already moving. Toward the open corridor. Toward the unknown. Vance. Brooks snapped. You don't go down there. Vance stopped just long enough to look back. If I don't, I become the next sealed file, and then he stepped out. The corridor beyond wasn't on any map he'd seen. Narrow, low ceiling. Concrete pressed in from both sides. The air felt different. Heavier. Harder to breathe. Each step echoed too loudly, like the walls were listening. Behind him, Brooks followed reluctantly. You don't understand, Brooks said under his breath. People don't come back from this layer. Vance didn't slow down. Then maybe it's time someone did. They reached the door. The same one from the screen, marked featureless, but unlocked. Vance placed his hand against it, cold, then pushed. Inside, rows of chambers. Not cells. Not rooms. Chambers, stacked, layered, each one sealed with reinforced steel, and a small observation slit. Some were empty, some were not. Vance moved closer to one. Inside, a man sat in the corner, still, silent, eyes open, but unfocused, like something inside him had been erased. Level X, Vance whispered. Brooks shook his head slowly. Oh, he said. This is beyond that. They kept moving. Further in, deeply, until Vance saw it. A chamber that wasn't sealed, open, waiting, and inside a body, lying still, covered. His pulse spiked. He stepped closer, pulled the sheet back, and froze. It was him, Detective Aaron Vance. Same face, same clothes, same everything. Brooks staggered back. No, that's not. It's a placeholder, Vance said, though his voice wasn't steady anymore. It has to be. But even as he said it, he wasn't sure. Because the detail was perfect. Too perfect. Like the system already knew him, already planned for him. The voice returned. Closer now. Clearer. Subject. Prepared for replacement. Vance spun around. I'm not your subject. Deviation detected. The lights flickered again. and suddenly the doors behind them slammed shut, one by one, cutting off the exit. Brooks grabbed Vance's arm. "We need to go now." But there was nowhere to go, only forward, or into the chamber. Vance's mind raced. The body outside the fence, Carter Hayes, declared dead, replaced. This was the process, not containment, substitution, erase. The problem, insert the version that complies, or declare it gone. You don't just lock people away, Vance said slowly. You rewrite the outcome. No answer, but the silence confirmed it. Brooks' voice shook. What do we do? Vance stared at the open chamber. The version of himself lying inside it, then back at the sealed doors. The system had already made its decision unless he made one first. He stepped into the chamber. Brooks grabbed him. What are you doing? Breaking it, Vance said, and before Brooks could stop him, Vance slammed the interior panel shut. From the inside. Vance! Brooks shouted, pounding on the door. Inside. The air was tighter, smaller, like the hidden chamber beneath D17. History repeating, but this time, he was ready. System, Vance said loudly, his voice echoing off the steel. You want compliance? Here it is. A pause. Then clarify. Vance leaned against the wall, forcing himself to stay calm. You only replace what resists, he said. You only act when something doesn't fit. Silence. Processing. So I fit. He finished. Another pause. Longer this time. Then, assessment in progress. Outside. Brooks stepped back as the chamber lights flickered. The system was thinking, evaluating, for the first time, not react. Inside. Vance closed his eyes briefly. Every instinct screamed that this was a mistake, that he was stepping into the same trap as Hayes. But there was one difference. He knew. He understood the pattern, and sometimes understanding is enough to break control. The voice returned. Assessment complete. A beat. Then, subject no longer classified as anomaly. The locks disengaged. The chamber door opened. Vance stepped out slowly. Alive. Unchanged. Brooks stared at him like he'd seen a ghost. You beat it, he said. Vance shook his head. No. He looked around at the endless chambers. The silent figures inside them. The system still humming beneath everything. I just convinced it to look away. Hours later, the official report was simple. System malfunction. Unauthorized structural elements under review. Incident contained, Carter Hayes. Listed as deceased. Again. No mention of the body outside the fence. No mention of level X. No mention of what was beneath the prison. But 3 months later, a guard doing routine checks reported something strange. Cell D17. The same one. The same floor. The same hidden chamber. Only this time there were fresh markings. New ones. Carved deeper than before. Clear. Deliberate. A message. 3 words. It learned you. And somewhere deep beneath the concrete, the system didn't forget. It adapted. It waited. And next time, it wouldn't misclassify the anomaly. If you think the story was intense, you already know what to do. Because the next one, it's worse.